As a clarinet teachers, we are responsible for the students' development. And I recognize that like so many times, the students, they don't really know how to practice. And the best strategy is to teach them how to practice slowly and what does that mean, the process, and they have to repeat multiple times. And once you reach a really high level, that doesn't mean like next morning you will continue from there. It's always like up and downs, and you have to repeat the process a million times. And after one day, everything just clicks together and it will work. I always like to uh, make sure the students understand that, like they really have to practice the clarinet and the clarinet technique and how the instrument works, to understand the physics of the instrument and adapt your way of playing of the instrument. Make sure like you control it and not the instrument is controlling you. So you don't play and don't create music the way how the instrument wants to speak, but you control the instrument, and that way you create music how the music requires it. And also our responsibility is to teach them to listen their own playing, to try to be outside of their own body and try to listen their own playing with the audience ears. Because sometimes we feel, oh, this sounds okay, or maybe the tempo was a little bit too slow, and in reality it's way too fast, and it's probably not okay. I think the solfege and the harmony lessons are very important because you need to develop the students' hearing. And also when we play on the clarinet, we hear our own sound and our own instrument multiple hours. And unfortunately, we get used to the imperfections. So it's very important to understand also that like different temperature, different reed leads us to a result of a different intonation. And sometimes you have to play with a piano which is out of tune. Sometimes you play with brass players, flute, oboes, and every other instrument has a different intonation. So I think the key of the intonation, to develop the intonation, is the clarinet technique, how you play on the clarinet, to be flexible. If you're not flexible, you cannot change the intonation. And I have certain exercises which I recommend to every student, basically playing different intervals from one note, semitone higher, and the full tone higher, and the minor third, major third, fourth, tritone, fifth, and so on, back and forth. And that helps to develop a very smooth airstream. And at the same time, of course, because you are playing very slowly, and all what you need to paying attention of is the sound quality and the perfect slur, you immediately realize the relations between the different notes in case of different intervals. And it's very easy to develop a sense of an intonation and a correction at the same time. For me, the sound quality is not that important in case of colors and in case of volume, like it is in case of flexibility. Because if the sound is flexible and you can do different colors with your own sound, that's already a very good result. Because if somebody has a gorgeous sound but is not doing anything with that gorgeous sound, that kind of playing is going to be boring after a very few minutes, if minutes, not just a minute. And somebody who doesn't have that nice sound, but the musicality and the playing is very interesting and captivating, then you don't care if the sound is not that great. But of course, it's always better if you are playing beautifully and a gorgeous sound. So we have to work on that. This exercise, which I mentioned already, that actually pretty good for developing the sound as well. But the good sound quality, which is, I repeat myself, it's very different, because a good sound can be really dark, really bright. It's more important, like the clarity of the sound. And of course, there are some things what you can measure. If the sound is having a real nice core and overtones, is always more interesting to listen. And if it's flexible, that's always more interesting to listen as well. And if it's not straight, but kind of live and round, that's always nicer than if it's not. But sometimes you don't need a beautiful sound. Sometimes you need an ugly sound. Sometimes you need a different kind of sound to represent a different kind of character, what serves the best interest of the music, what you're playing at the moment. So, yeah, to be able to create a good sound is always about the control here and the throat and the airstream. So most importantly, here you have to be relaxed and flexible, and the throat has to be open, not pressed, to make sure like the reed vibrates freely. And if you have a good mouthpiece, a good reed, and a good clarinet, and you allow them to work and vibrate well enough, then it will sound very, very nicely. Because in the 21st century, all the mouthpieces and all the instruments are such a high level, high quality, thanks to the instrument maker companies and the mouthpiece companies. So it's easy. Just you have to play relaxed, and you have to practice that, like how you can play relaxed, not stressed, not tension, not having tension anywhere. Playing clarinet, that's or any other instrument, that's a very multiple complexity task. And you can be the most amazing musician. If you don't have the skills, if you don't have the equipment to express your musicality, then the result will not be the best, or not be as good as it could be if you would have more advanced skills. So, in my opinion, we have to practice as a musician, as an instrument player, the instrument itself. And we have to consider that aspect like as a sport. We have to train ourselves to be able to bring out the best from our body and push our body to our limits, to control the instrument as much as we can, in case of speed, in case of articulation quality, in case of legato slurs, and so on. And when you have all these skills, when you want to perform any kind of music, you just pick up the necessary ones. If you need a bright sound, you can change it because you have all the skills to be able to change the color. If you need different intonation because you are in a different country, you are able to do that because you are an advanced player with really great technique. So it's not a problem. So that's why very important to develop the skills, because then you are going to be a more complete player. And when you are on the stage and in a difficult situation, like a little bit stressed, you know what to do, and you know how to give your best musical performance, because playing an instrument is kind of an automatic thing, and the instrument is basically the extension of your own body, and you are using it to bring out the best possible musical expressions from your soul and present it to the audience. Well, the music education, I mean, in my country, what is my country at the moment, like Hungary or the United States. So it's interesting maybe to compare the two different music education systems. In Hungary, just like in Poland, usually clarinet players start to play clarinet when they are age 8, 9, maybe. In the music school, it's a special school where they teach music only. Music means one instrument, in our case is the clarinet, and solfege, and maybe piano, maybe a little harmony, and maybe a little history of music. And the students are trained to play individually, and then a couple of years later, they play with a piano accompaniment, and then maybe they play in a little ensemble, wind ensemble, for example. And they are trying to get into a secondary school, which is like, let's say, the conservatory or high school. And then they train professionally for 4 years. Everybody plays the same scales, like all the scales, and the well-known etude books like the Krebs, Rose, or Jean. And 4 years later, they try to go to the best universities. In case of Hungary, it's the Liszt Academy, or there are other universities as well. I mean, not necessarily the teaching quality is the best at the Liszt Academy, but the most famous and the most important institute is definitely in Budapest, the Liszt Academy. And when a player enters to the highest level, to the university, age 18, 19, they can already play very well the instrument, and they have a very good knowledge of the musical background, in case of solfege, harmony, history of music, and they have a knowledge of the different styles and so on. But the real work starts that time, and it's very hard to chase a young person's dream when the person is like 20 years old and working so hard for over a decade to be a professional player. And it must be it's very challenging that time. And we lose so many great talents at that age because they are just not willing to work anymore the same hard way. And it's very sad because they are very close to the top. And here in the US, it's very different. Usually, the students who are applying to the university, they are not that advanced like in Hungary in case of clarinet playing skills. And the basics are not that strong. And the quantity, in the other hand, is a lot more. So we have a lot more students here than in Hungary. And because they don't have the Kodály system what we have, and they don't have this kind of a pyramid which is based on the elementary music schools and then the high school, conservatory, and so on. So the level of the students is depending completely on that individual who is he taking or who has he taken lessons with. Which is better? If somebody here in the US is very determined and wants to play very well, at age 18 with a relatively good background, starts to work really very hard and can reach a very high level in professional era because he's not burned out at age 18. Because in our system, sometimes that happens, like the students are pushed to their limits at a very young age and a very young age, and after they just lose the motivation and lose the willingness to practice because they just don't love the instrument anymore because they were forced to work so hard. three most important pieces from the clarinet literature. Oh, that's impossible. I could say 30, even though our literature is very, very small compared to the piano or violin literature. Okay, so the most important is obviously the Mozart concerto, not the clarinet concerto, because Mozart does not have a clarinet concerto, but the A major concerto for bass clarinet. I'm very enthusiastic to play that on the bass clarinet instead of a regular clarinet. We have to say Brahms, and we have to be very grateful for Mühlfeld, who inspired Brahms to come back from retirement and compose those gorgeous pieces for us. And since I mentioned the Mozart concerto, and Mozart has another amazing piece, the quintet and the Gigastücke, of course, and many others. But from one composer, one piece, and there's the concerto in case of Mozart, not the quintet. In that case, I would say the Brahms Clarinet Quintet, which is also one of my personal favorites. And as a clarinet player, we can't miss the French literature because we play on a French instrument. Well, it's very hard to say, but yeah, probably the Debussy Rhapsody. But I'm saying that because I know it has to be a French piece, and it's so hard to select only one because there are so many gorgeous. I love the Poulenc Sonata, for example, but of course the Francais Concerto, the Bozza Concerto, and the Tomasi Concerto, and all the others are just great pieces. And if we mention the Brahms sonatas, there are the Hindemith sonatas, the Hindemith Quintet, the Kromberg Concerto. I love the second concerto by Krusel, also second concerto by Spohr, and so on. So we are very fortunate because, and the Saint-Saëns Sonata, of course. We don't have a huge repertoire for clarinet, but all the great composers at some point decided to write something for our instrument. And somehow it's very common, like they wrote an actual masterpiece at the very end of their life. You know, if we thinking about the Poulenc, also kind of a Debussy, but Saint-Saëns Sonata, Brahms sonatas, and the quintet, and we could name many others. So these are very matured masterpieces, and we are very fortunate to have those masterpieces by these amazing composers. I think develop the clarinet technique is a very complex thing, yet you can't really separate from each other the different things. So what do we mean about technique? Most of the people are thinking about technique like fast fingers and play really super speed and very even. For me, the technique is more like a complex thing. It's not just the speed of the fingers, but also the quality of the touch of the fingers, because that kind of quality is affecting also the style of playing, like how legato, how crispy you play, and also the technique of the airstream, the air column, how you control the air, how flexible you can play, and also there is an ambitious technique like how relaxed can you stay in certain difficult points where it's very necessary. Otherwise, you compromise the flexibility or the legato of the playing. And of course, there is also an articulation technique, which is, in case of clarinet, probably the most difficult of all of these. So for the fingering perfection, of course, the most important probably is the good finger position, to have relaxed fingers. And I really always encourage everybody to practice in front of the mirror and see how is the fingers how is the hand and the finger position on the keywork of the instrument, to make sure like it's the most efficient way of playing. And of course, you have to practice everything slowly and with dotted rhythm and so on, the usual techniques. And while you are practicing slowly and focusing on the fingering, you have to focus as well on the airstream, like different registers requires different air speed or air pressure, we say. And but probably I should have started with the most important thing, like to develop the technique is the key to that, to open your ears and be able to hear the imperfections. And so many people say like practice more, practice more. I don't really believe in that, like you have to practice hours and hours and hours and then you will be a perfect player. Of course, you develop because you play many hours on the instrument. But I think it's more important the quality, how much attention can you pay for the high quality playing and perfection. And in that case, you don't need to practice that many hours and the result will be so much better. Because if you practice badly, then the technique is going to be bad because you repeat multiple times that interpretation. So probably the most important, as I said, to open your ears and slow down everything to have enough time to recognize the imperfections and be able to correct them. As a professional clarinet player who is teaching, playing in an orchestra, we don't have the fortune to practice as much as we would like to. And my daily exercises, I have to confess, so many times I don't even have time to play daily exercises. I just grab the music and without warming up, I start to play immediately the music. And since I'm practicing and playing slowly, I combine the daily exercise with the actual clarinet concerto or clarinet piece what I'm playing at the moment. And I try to practice my technical stuffs while I'm playing the concerto or piece what I'm playing. And of course, at some point, I really have to sit down, and when I don't have a concert for a couple of days and I have some extra time, I do like to spend an hour, maybe an hour and a half, just on technical things like developing the slur quality and the articulation quality and so on. So time to time, like maybe once a week or in 2 weeks. Now, but when I was a student, trust me, I played hours and hours of scales, and I really love to play scales. I love the monotonity of playing scales. I do believe in the power of the mental strength, and I also do believe in that. Like when you are young and studying somewhere, and you have a vision, where do you want to see yourself in 5, 10 years? And you establish some kind of goal for yourself in your future career, that very possibly are going to happen. I mean, I'm not talking about that like, okay, I'm going to, because I met once with a student and I asked her, what's your career goal? And the answer was like, I want to be the principal clarinet player of the Berlin Philharmonic. And I said, that's wonderful. So do you know what kind of instrument do they play over there? And the answer was like, of course, buffet, right? And I said, no, unfortunately not. They play on German system clarinet. And the student was not aware of that. And so this is like a goal which is impossible. But if you have a vision like where and what are you going to be in 5 and 10 years, which is realistic, I think that most likely going to happen. And in case of everyday's thing, like if you play something and you have a better understanding of the piece, not just playing the notes. It's easier to play. And that's also kind of a part of a mental game, mental knowledge. And also when you go on stage, so many times the approach, like how you can get over of the stage fright and is a very strong factor on your performance. So technically, you can practice millions of hours, but if you go on stage and you are not able to control your nerves, you might not give a very good result compared to that amount of work what you invested. So so many times, no, actually all the time, it's more important to focus and concentrate on the job what you have to do, and 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 try to get over the actual fact, like it's could be an uncomfortable to go on stage and perform in front of a million people, because this is our profession. And it's also possible to practice this, like mentally. You can imagine, like you walk on stage, you go to a concert hall and you play your program while you are actually in your armchair at home and doing nothing, just focusing on that, and imagine like how will you play a concert. So yes, mental strength and mental power is very important. And I think in case of a good performance, I don't want to say it's a number like how much percentage is it, but it's a huge percentage of the final result. And sometimes during my teaching career, I faced with that problem. Like some people believe, like if they put on some super strong reed, they will play a very large volume sound. And this kind of tone production, I don't really believe. I do believe in that, like if you are having a wonderful technique, then your sound is going to project really well. So you don't need to play super loud. The clarinet is not a loud instrument. If you want to play loud, pick up a trombone or a trumpet. The clarinet is not that kind of instrument which is able to produce that volume like a brass instrument. Of course, you can play loud, but I think it's more important like to have that kind of projection, that kind of tonal quality which is projecting instead of playing super loud in a nearby environment, because that's not necessarily fills up it's a large room, large concert hall. And this is a conception of technique. And sometimes it's difficult to make the students understand like how the sound waves are transformed into the other side of the hall, how the air is transforming the sound waves, which is basically basic physics. So it's not the strong reed what is going to give you a large sound. And of course, if you have a strong reed, you lose many other aspects. And the intonation is also, so all the clarinets are tuned in the factory in a way. And of course, you can do some fine tunings, but I don't like when somebody says like, oh, my throat tone is like this, my throat tone is like that, because in which concert hall with what mouthpiece, with which reed, softer, stronger, older, newer, in which humidity, in which room temperature, in winter, in the summer. So the intonation is always changing. And we, as a clarinet player, we have the beautiful task like to fix the intonation and change it according to the immediate circumstances. Anyway, when you play in the orchestra and you play on B flat, then you have to switch for A clarinet and the solo is coming. You know the instrument is cold, so it's going to be flat. So yeah, you have to make sure like you are able to change the intonation with the embouchure position and maybe the airspeed position a little bit to correct it as the necessary thing. And there is no such a thing like a perfect intonation. And it's very common nowadays, like people put a tuner on the music stand and they play and they want every note to be green. That's also relative, because when you play, let's say, an F sharp, and the tuner says it's a little bit sharp, that could be good. It depends on which harmony you play at the moment. And if the exact same note you play, but it has to be a G flat and it's still sharp, that's probably not good, because the G flat is supposed to be a lot lower in intonation than an F sharp most of the times. But it depends always on the harmony and what kind of function that note is having in the harmony. So that's hard to make the students understand. Like, a tuner is important and it's good to have and it's like a good reference, but this is a better tuner than your battery driven equipment.